Okay, welcome everyone to the February meeting of the Seneca County IDA Board. We have a quorum today. Welcome, everyone. First item of business is the approval of our minutes from the last meeting of January 4th. Do we have a motion to approve last month's meeting's minutes?
So moved.
Second, Ben. Is there any discussion or changes to the minutes? None heard. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The approval of the minutes is passed. And the second item on our agenda is the unaudited financial statements through the end of the year of 2023. Mr. Kernan, would you?
Thank you. I'm going to start off with the comparative balance sheet and changes between 12/31/23 and 12/31/22. Total current assets at the end of 23 measured $3,583,000. That's up $256,000 from our 22 position. Checking and savings were up to $86,000. Accounts receivable up $185,000. Lease receivables are up $1,493. Notes receivable, current portion, were actually down just under $17,000. Notes receivable long-term measured $185,000. That's down $68,000 from 2022. Fixed assets measured $327,000, down $4,000 from 22. And other assets measured $135,000, down $145,000 from 2002. Total assets measured $4,231,000. That's up $38,000 from 2002 positions. And total liabilities and equity measured $4,331,000. Again, up $38,000 from our 12/22 position. Looking at the comparative statement of profit and loss, the changes between 23 and 22 are as follows. Total ordinary income measured $653,000. That's up $879,000 from 2022. Major reason for that difference was property sales in 2022 measured a negative $717,000. Total ordinary expenses measured $468,000. That's up $39,000 from 2022. Net ordinary income measured $185,000. That's up $839,000 from 2022. Total other income measured $113,000. That's up $96,000 from 2022. And total expenses measured $164,000. That's up again $164,000 from 2022. Total income measured $134,000 on 12/31/23 compared to a loss of $636,000 for the year ending 2022. When we look at the budget versus actual for the year 2023, total ordinary income was budgeted by $1,492,000. Our actual number was $653,000. Again, a difference in this case of a negative $338,000. Now, I would indicate in this case that included in our budget were in agency fees for 2023 was $1,282,000 for the Torlinda Solar Project. This did not occur in 2023, and it has now been transferred to 2024 budget. Total ordinary expenses were budgeted at $488,000. It came in at $468,000. In this case, a positive difference of $19,000. Net ordinary income budgeted at $1,004,000. The actual was $1,185,000. Again, a negative difference of $818,000. Again, due to the difference in the solar project transfer between budget years 2023 and 2024. Other income budgeted totaled 93,000. Actual came in at 113,000. Again, a positive difference in this case of $20,000. Other expenses were budgeted at 193,000. They came in at 164,000. Again, in this case, a positive difference of $29,000. Net income budget was 904,000 against an actual of 134,000, a difference of 769. Again, the Torrelina solar project numbers affected that position. Net income without solar project, the Torrelina solar project on a budgeted basis, in this case, would have been a negative 377,000. It came in at 134,000 positive. The difference in this case would be a $512,000 difference. Again, the year end came in at a positive 134, and then the actual what I would refer to as the adjusted budget by a considerable dollar amount. Again, the package included many schedules and along with graphs, and I would entertain any questions at this point relating to our year-end position from the board.
Questions for Bob? Anybody? Do you have a sense of where the Torrelina project in terms of timing stands?
I don't.
No.
Not really. They're in the process of essentially rebidding their contract with NYSERDA for their utility rates, because the project was originally approved so long ago that at the rates their contract was initially approved, the project isn't viable anymore because of how the costs have changed dramatically for them. So I don't have any information as far as timeline other than that. I, in some ways, would be surprised if we close on that project in 2024.
Other questions? Okay, Bob, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is our committee assignments.
Need
Bob?
approval?
We need sorry.
Excuse me, probably need approval on the
Sorry about
finance.
that. Do we have a motion to approve the financial report?
Motion to approve.
A second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thanks, Bob. The next item on the agenda is the announcement of IDA committee appointments. Everyone has a piece of paper in front of them. It shows the proposed slate of committee members. It looks like this. I will walk through it here. The officers for the year are myself as the chair, Steve Russo as the vice chair, Ben Guthrie as our treasurer, and Ralph Lott as our secretary. The IDA committees, the IDA governance committee, we have a slate of myself as chair, Steve as vice chair, Tom Murray and Seth Kircher on the governance committee. The audit and the finance committee, we have Ben Guthrie as the chair, Steve Russo, and myself also on the committee. For the two other sets of committees, the EDC, we have proposed no changes to these committees for 2024 from where they were in 2023. I think the main, these are committees that really meet a few times a year. They're not heavy lifts for any of the members, so that I don't know that, I've not heard any objections to this slate. So I would entertain a motion to accept these committee assignments for the 2024 year.
So moved.
Ernie, thank you. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Steve, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks to everyone for agreeing to serve on those committees. And now, our featured guests. The next item on the agenda is the team from the Groggery. Would you like the floor?
Please.
Okay.
Want us up here?
Yeah.
Chris was thinking maybe to put this one up, and then I can actually take these two to maybe both sides of the table. Oh, yeah, and these are those are obviously our landscaping plan, and then we just brought a couple of the building plans, so put one on that side and one over here, just for you to take a look at.
My name is Chris Stamberger. This is my wife, Kim Stamberger, and our business partner, Kyle Mosier. Kim and I reside in Interlaken, and also my corporate headquarters is also located in Ovid. So we're Seneca County residents as well as business owners currently in the community. And then obviously Groggery Development LLC is a Seneca County-based LLC as well. There's two main factors that drove us to get involved in this project. The Groggery building was something that I kind of eyed for a long time and really couldn't figure out something to do with it. I have a personal friendship with Keith Tidball, who's on the Fayette Town Board and is also spearheading the Fayette Hamlet revitalization. So the project that we're proposing, like I said, it's twofold in what we're trying to accomplish. Number one, we want to be a positive impact on the Hamlet revitalization, but the primary reason for the project is to add long-term housing to Seneca County, which there's a dire shortage of, which I think everyone knows. In my own corporation, recently, one of our employees got divorced, and I give you this info because it was really eye-opening to me on how the housing crisis, how short we are on housing, and the crisis really does exist. The person was looking for a home, whether either to rent or buy, and really any of the options out there. I worked with the person, pretty closely to help them find housing, and it was near impossible. And I actually ended up selling her a rental property that we owned, which I wasn't really dying to sell, but I didn't want her to leave the area because she's a valuable employee of our corporation. So that really brought things to light for me, and I approached Kyle to go into partnership on this project, and we really believe that it's a situation that needs to be addressed as far as the housing crisis in our county for workers and families who are trying to come here. They've got jobs, but they're getting forced away because they can't find a good place to live. And our goal is to basically supply 6 units for residential long-term housing, as well as a small retail space in the Groggery building, which has been vacant since 2014, I believe. It was opened in 13, closed in 14, am I correct saying that?
I believe so.
And went for sale, excuse me, yep, go ahead.
Well, I have a question. How do you get the beer smell out of it? The stale beer smell.
The good news is it wasn't open long enough to really get much beer smell.
Okay.
Unfortunately for the owners, certainly it's unfortunate for them, but they had revamped the entire property. They spent a tremendous amount of their funds there. Unfortunately, that does not do us much good. It really needs to be totally redone. There are 2 existing apartments upstairs, but for our needs, we really want everything to be essentially brand new. We want to provide really nice apartments at a reasonable price and help the community, and also help the hamlet of Fayette, because it's I think revitalizing our towns in this area is certainly a priority for a lot of the communities. And with the tourism and things that are going on that really got ramped up during COVID, I think it's really an awesome opportunity for our entire community and the different individual communities. So that's kind of an overview of who we are and why we're doing this. And obviously, we're approaching you for some financial assistance to help this, essentially buffer some of the costs that we have, and it's a substantial investment, obviously, in the community. And with that, I don't know what other information you'd like. I'll answer any questions.
Tell us about your primary business, is real estate development? your
No,
primary business?
my corporation, Steinberger Sender Associates, we are a manufacturer's representative for heat and air conditioning products. Most people have no idea what that means. What that means is I represent about 20 different manufacturers that are, whether it's commodities, interconnecting components for HVAC products, as far as equipment and equipment itself. We cover from Maine to Virginia. I have 11 outside salespeople scattered throughout that geography and 4 inside salespeople in Ovid. And we sell to wholesale distributors. In this geography, it would be like an Supply, FW Web, ID Booth. And my customer would then in turn sell to a contractor who would in turn install in your home.
And have you done development like this before, and do you plan to do more in the future?
We have done, not to this scale, we have remodeled many homes, residential properties in the area. If you're familiar with Sheldrake at all, we did the Sheldrake farmhouse. That was close to a $750,000 project that we revitalized that. We literally bought it for $40,000, so you can probably picture what it looked like when we bought it, and revitalized that, and actually recently sold it. We've also just purchased Orchard Lodge down in Sheldrake from Jim and Tammy Stoyer, who own the Driftwood Inn. And that project, if you drive by that, you'll see it's totally ripped apart. We're totally revitalizing that house that needed some work. My office property, we did a lot of work there, put up a new facility. My office literally 10 years ago was in a mobile home. Now we're in a large office with storage facility on County Road 139, just west of Four Corners of Sheldrake. But as far as a property like this, no. I can tell you that this is kind of a stepping stone to even a larger project that we're looking to do in downtown Ovid. If you know the Four Corners, where the pizza shop and Chinese restaurant burned down 8-9 years ago, I own that along with someone, the vacant lot there we own. So that's another area that we're looking to redevelop. And instead of it being a parking lot, have it be something that's beneficial to the community of downtown Ovid.
One of the challenges we've seen in housing over the last 3 years is the increase in short-term rentals.
No interest. From our perspective.
How do we know? Again, no disrespect there.
If there's a contractual obligation that we need to do for that, I'd be glad to have a lawyer write one up.
We'll sign away on that if there's something that would make the idea.
And I'll tell you exactly from my personal perspective, the Sheldrake farmhouse was a VRBO / short-term rental. We did that for 5 years. 4 years in, I couldn't stand it. I mean, couldn't stand it. We made a lot of money, and I didn't want the money anymore. I couldn't. That's why we sold it. I wanted
Because
to,
of the transients and the turnover.
And don't take this the wrong way. This will come across a little politically incorrect. In my business, my main business, I'm 100% business to business. I don't deal with homeowners, and so I'm used to that style of business.
Yeah.
Dealing with, even like retail or public, I just don't do well with that. I don't think the same way. I want business to business really works for me.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I'm trying to be politically correct.
Well, and also just to interject, so Kyle Mosher, our other partner, has also purchased a number of properties for long-term rentals on
So
Willard and.
I own multiple smaller 1 to 3 unit apartments, primarily in Seneca County. I do have one that's over the border into Tompkins. None of them are short-term rentals. They are 100% long-term rentals. I share the same thing with Chris and Kim. I don't have any interest in being in that. And that's why I think we're both more than willing to, if that's a fear for anybody, that we're trying to somehow parlay this into short-term. I don't have I got the energy for a lot, but I don't have the energy for that. I don't have the energy for 3 times a week turnovers because somebody only wants to stay 2 nights. And as a local business owner with Chris, I share the same, again, that's kind of what brought us together on this project, is this need for places and people to live. One of my guys right now, I'm based in Trumansburg, just about 100 feet over the Tompkins County line with my business, and I have one of my guys is driving in from Newark currently right now. You know, about an hour and 10-minute commute, which is almost unheard of in my industry. So again, the lack of housing has affected both of us. You know, my background, similar to how Chris mentioned, purchasing the much dilapidated farmhouse project. I have now had a couple of those under my belt where I've purchased these 10-year vacant, you know, almost condemnable properties, and then completely redone them from top to bottom. I enjoy that. It's nice to see something that goes from, you know, the current project I'm working on in Interlake, and people have literally approached me, want to know when we're tearing it down, and I say we're not. And I say that, you know, really with excitement, because I know how we can take a project that looks, you know, rough and worn out and like nobody else is interested in it. And I would lump the Groggery into this. This set on the market for, I believe, close to 6.5, maybe 7 years since it was listed with a realtor. And I now take a lot of pride in the fact that we're going to do the same thing there that we've done on some of these other properties, which is take something that is an eyesore for the community in many ways. You know, the Groggery had been let go, it was overgrown. You know, there hadn't been a coat of paint on anything in almost a decade now, and really turn that into something something nice for the community. Again, we're both equally excited about being part of the Hamlet's revitalization. We've set in on a number of their planning board meetings, as well as their town board meetings, to kind of better understand what that revitalization looks like and how, in many ways, we can kind of be a cornerstone to that. This property is basically the center point of Fayette, and, you know, across the street from the post office, you know, it's just kind of the hustle and bustle of that little tiny hamlet, and kind of how we can be good stewards for that. So.
Also, from an economic standpoint, if I may interject, you're talking about short-term rentals. When Chris mentioned we purchased a property called Orchard Lodge, when we committed to buying it, our plan was to do short-term rentals. We've been very successful with a property right around the corner, and there is so much competition now. There's you know, people doing it all over the place. We looked at it economically, and we actually can make virtually the same amount of money going into it as a long-term rental property instead of short-term, without all of the hassle of it. So,
You know, strictly from a business standpoint, you know, I analyze short-term very closely, and I think the area is really at a pretty high saturation point. And I think you're gonna start seeing some of those short terms fall off, actually, because so many people have done it. And we also are part of the community up in Old Forge, New York, and the exact same thing is happening up there. There's no long-term rentals, everyone's gone to short-term, but there's a saturation point up there as well where it's falling off. And just to be totally candid, we're actually looking to do a 2-unit apartment project in Herkimer County, just outside of Old Forge, with some land we own up there. So, I mean, we are dedicated now to long-term. I see the negative effect that all the VRBO/Airbnb, and I'm not trying to pick on a brand, I should say short-term rentals. There's certainly a time and place for them, but the high quantities that have come around have really hurt a lot of different communities, and particularly communities that have high tourism levels. And you know, Herkimer County is the same, Seneca County, and we're really trying to, you know, essentially change the tide of how that's working and create long-term as opposed to short-term.
So I have a question here.
Yep.
Parking.
Yes.
I believe the property includes the piece by the post office?
Yes, we own that one across the street as well.
So have you worked out something with the post office for parking? Because
Well, the post office contract only gives them a very small
Yeah.
portion of that lot. We actually have probably 80% of that lot we have full rights to. The post office doesn't have rights to that. And we actually, in this, there's parking in here, you probably can't see it.
Yeah.
But the way and if you look at the plan as well, we really try to make sure that aesthetically, because of the revitalization of the hamlet, we're spending probably a lot more money than we need to make sure all the entrances to the building are in the rear and all the parking is in the rear, because currently, there is parking here on Portman Road. We're gonna eliminate any opportunity for parking there. We want all the cars behind the building. You know, aesthetics are a big deal to us. We like nice stuff.
And the septic is to the north where the
The sep-
fenced-in area is to the
Yep,
north?
and that, actually, the folks that redid the Groggery purchased this strip of land here, this little square, and there's, septic is there. We've already talked to the health department in Seneca County, and it does fit the needs of the expansion that we're looking to do. So we've already gone through that process as well. Yeah, the septic is essentially right here.
And just to give you an idea, you know, the old Groggery entrance was here. So if you look on the plans, there's a 220 square foot, it's basically a built-to-suit type of retail space. That would be the only entrance here on Foreman Road. The entrance to all of the apartments would be here in the parking lot area for safety and just for aesthetics.
And I think our current numbers for parking allow us for approximately 2.5 spots per unit.
Yeah.
So ample for a two-car household, as well as visitors, guests.
Does that include the piece across the road by the post
No.
No,
office?
No.
that's just the parking here.
You will not see anything to do with the other corner on any of this, because we didn't want to try to complicate it by saying.
I see it's not in the drawing,
Yeah.
so I figured.
They're two tax parcels,
Yeah.
and we've kind of looked at it as, you know, they needed that, I think, back in the day for parking for the restaurant. You know, you have 100 people come on a Friday night for a fish fry, you need room for them. We don't have that, so there's ample parking, you know, around the Groggery on that parcel.
And there's also, you know, that parcel, we see a lot of different visions for that as part of the revitalization of the hamlet, whether it's something, you know, that we do in conjunction with the town that's for the community. I mean, that's why we really didn't want to tie it into this. We want to have a different vision for that parcel that hopefully is something that, you know, again, it benefits the hamlet of Fayette.
And if any of you guys travel that way, you've probably noticed that both those parcels have been substantially cleaned up, cut back, you know, trees, you know, removed that were just overgrown, just to try to show like what we have available. As Chris mentioned, you know, we've had some discussions with the town board. We're open to just about any idea that benefits everybody with that parcel, including, you know, maintaining that post office, which is, as we've learned, is quite near and dear to that little hamlet of Fayette.
Well, and the fact that you're including some retail space in this for presumably a coffee shop or something,
Yeah.
that's great. I mean, that will make your property like a center of focus for the community.
And that, so, go ahead, Kim, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
No, it's just-
That's something that, you know, in talking, and honestly, with Jeff Trout and Keith Tidball, as well as other board members, they really were looking to see that, and, you know, we were fortunate that we could fit that in, and we, you know, like I said, we want to be the start or the first stepping stone of the revitalization of the hamlet. I mean, I
You
think
know,
that,
in Trumansburg, Gimme Coffee did that.
yep, absolutely. No, and you drive by there in the morning, there's people sitting outside, it's a real congregation point in a
Yep.
positive way.
Yep.
And that's not a large space either.
600 square feet.
You know, ours is a little smaller than that, but we've come up with a list of, you know, dozens of things, whether it's, you know, a small professional, you know, satellite office for a law firm, a real estate company, whether it's, you know, massage, or there's a lot of different, you know, holistic medicines and stuff that could operate in that size space, barber shops, you know, there's a lot more. When we first kind of came up with the space, my thought was, I'm like, man, this, you know, who's going to want to go there? And then as you start brainstorming ideas, you realize that actually this, you don't need 10,000 square foot in a grocery store. You know, there's so many other businesses that will thrive at a low, you know, monthly rent with a smaller space, and that's kind of our goal with that space. And there is parking designated, I believe, as part of this for that retailer, that commercial space.
Good plan.
Other questions for Chris and Kim and Kyle? No other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys don't have any use for a copy of this evening for any reason, correct?
If you could leave one of the building plans, that would be helpful.
Would you like it electronically, or do you want the full size?
Electronically would be awesome, actually.
Yeah, I can do
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be better.
Yeah, rather than us around.
Yeah. We have a lot of maps, I don't
Mm-hmm.
need to take on more of that kind of thing. Thank you.
Actually, if you've got an extra one, I'd love a copy of it.
Yeah,
I want to see your kitchen design.
there's 6 of them.
Yeah.
No, we worked with a local architect out of Auburn, to do these. And the varying space size, I think, is 830 to just shy of 1,100 square feet. So the other thing too, I'll mention while we're on that real quick is, these are not like efficiency size, these are meant to be, larger lived-in spaces.
Yeah.
But I think you'll see that on.
Thank you. Thank you again.
All right, thank you. So we have in front of us the inducement resolution. Sarah, do you want to take us through what this represents for this process?
Sure, so as a refresher for everybody, the inducement resolution is the first step in potential IDA approval of a project or incentives. It essentially acknowledges that the application has been received by the board and is complete, and allows us to move forward with scheduling a public hearing and doing a cost-benefit analysis for the project. So you've all received a copy of the application, and then we did also, this is the first project that we are considering since we last talked about moving to a standard pilot formula and also sort of a rubric for evaluating pilots. So we did include, I think with everybody's briefing memo, a copy of what that evaluation checklist looks like. So this project, per that, would not be eligible for an enhanced negotiated pilot, but just to kind of let you know what some of the scoring criteria were that it did touch on. So one being adaptive reuse, another one being that it's a downtown revitalization project. It's in the hamlet of Fayette. We do have some points here for market rate housing and mixed use for commercial residential use of the property.
Did they tell us what the rents are that they are proposing?
I do not have the specific rent numbers. They mentioned that there would be market rate apartments.
Who decides its market rate?
Right, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
It's all over the place if you say market rate.
Guess what, they're not subsidized.
It's not low-income housing.
Yeah.
It's not what I would consider to be high-end luxury housing. This would be somewhere more in the middle.
Yeah, as long as it's not
Obviously,
getting.
market rate's kind of a broad description. I mean, at the
Yeah,
end,
it
it's
is.
whatever someone is gonna pay.
Well, I think Steve hit more on the other side of it. It's not subsidized housing,
No.
so you're gonna try to get whatever you can for market. We are entering into a different world here, getting into this kind of stuff on rental properties. When we talk about trying to get housing done, that's everybody else's, but, most people are not that favorable on doing housing type benefits with pilot programs. You get into the rental side, I've always said, we're not gonna get housing development here unless a developer can get a break on taxes while he's getting the site up and going, and really the infrastructure side to get up and get started. So I'm in favor of that. And this in Hamlet and Keith and all those, I know they're all working on trying to do the improvements, so from that perspective, I like the idea of this project. We are going in down a road of getting into doing tax breaks on rental properties. That's a whole different world, and you're giving longer term benefits out. It's not helping somebody to get up and get started, get the infrastructure brought in, doing that kind of stuff. There's a million rental properties out there that are gonna qualify to get this, and we're gonna be under the gun trying to decide which one ought to get it and which one shouldn't.
Well, I think partly what's gonna help us is, as we talked about before, I was surprised these guys were budgeting 600,000 and that it was worth their while to mess with us. So, because I think we're gonna be dealing with people who are closer to $1 million in
Or
project
more.
size.
This
Yeah.
project is on sort of the smaller side. It's one of those things that, you know, when people come to us with a potential project, we will sort of do what I'll call, I guess, a napkin model of what a potential, you know, what the IDA sort of standard pilot would look like for them in terms of benefit versus what the costs are. And it's always up to the developer at the end of the day if they wanna pursue an application.
But
They
you
felt
are,
like for this
you are
project it
talking
was.
no tax on this property to begin with, first year. Correct?
No additional tax.
Yeah.
They would pay the existing taxes
The
on
existing
the
tax
property.
rate, if they go in and they knock that place down, it's gonna be what it was taxed at before.
It'll be set based on the assessment at closing, our closing.
So whatever the rate, whatever the taxable value is as of the date of pilot closing.
So
So in theory, your concern is that they,
Before, it's always.
they bulldoze it and then they
Bulldoze
have
it.
just
Yeah.
a plan.
We've always said, you know what, yeah, we give tax breaks for improvements, but you're gonna get the taxes you've always had here. We're gonna help make improvements, so you're not losing anything on taxes. And it may not be with this project, but, you know, you could certainly go in areas where it could be. So, this is just, I'm all in for trying to get better housing here. I don't care, it's hard to get housing. A lot of people, I've said it, I'm the one that argues for it. You have people that come here to work for the hospital, they go up to Canandaigua to live because we do projects in Canandaigua, so I'm not against Canandaigua, but they leave this county, or if they're people that retire, they leave this county because we just don't have housing. New people come here, we don't have housing. My thought was more along the line of trying to get some developers to come here and actually build housing developments where you're gonna have home ownership, give a tax break to the person to put the sewer, the water, all that startup costs, and give them a few years break until they get a home up and going, to try to attract some developers here. This is a whole different thing. I'd love it for the Hamlet. These seem like really good people. It'd be nice to get that improvement. I'm not saying it's a bad project, but we're gonna start down the road, and now this one, they're talking long-term rents. We don't say it's for long-term rents, or it's not long-term rents, or it's, you know, bed and breakfast, or rentals, or tourism. And he's right, when he said, you go up to Lake Placid, you can't get much higher end than there. That community, they're rethinking the whole thing. They've almost, beautiful community, but they almost destroyed what's there. I mean, all the old beautiful homes that were there and the people that owned them, they're all owned by people that are renting them out to 15, 20 people, and you live next door, and the people next door, it's a party house for the whole summer and fall. And that has gone over terrible. The whole town's going, what the heck did we do here? You know, so we don't necessarily want to go down that road either. If you get into doing these rental property on the lake, okay, you live in a home next to it, and now you got people with 15 people partying all summer long, and you live there with your wife and have lived there your whole life, and you're living next to a party house all day long. Well, you might say, well, this isn't that project, but once we go here, how are we going to separate that project from this project? I'm just saying it's a lot of variables here that we're going to get into that are a lot different. Some of them are going to be good, some are going to be some challenges.
I mean, can we say, and I think a project like this is a response to the proliferation of short-term rentals.
Yep.
And, you know, if the short-term rental market sort of reverses itself because it's oversaturated and everyone who's offering short-term rentals decides it's not worth it any longer, maybe we have a different posture the next time around. I mean, I don't know what the sort of the practice of precedent is around here. The fact that we've approved this one under these conditions with some assurances that we're not gonna see in a short-term rental, that doesn't obligate us to approve everyone that comes down the pipe, I don't think.
You're gonna have a tough time arguing the difference, but if you do, which he said, I welcome it. I think this is a nice project, but he said, I welcome it, that we put the terms and conditions and say, this is the kind of project, and
We claw it back, or we have some
That
other.
can be a material, one of the material conditions for the purpose of the
Yeah.
project.
And I'm just saying, those are the things you gotta think about.
Yeah, definitely.
You do have to, with residential projects, you do have to make a separate set of findings, which you'll make for this one. Essentially that, you know, it's necessary to foster economic development, right?
Yeah.
That's what the IDA's mission
Yep.
is, which I don't think that there's any dispute about that in this community, right? But like Bruce says, if the market does in 5 years turn around, you know, and you've got a more vibrant housing market, at that point, you'd have to look and say, you know, is this assistance really necessary to foster
Yeah.
economic?
And-
So that's what keeps you from sliding down that slippery slope into, you know, the guy who's got
And
a
we
couple of
also
units
have
on Main Street
a,
wants a
Yeah.
pilot, right?
we have a clause that we put into our UTEP, and we will be getting to that today, but that requires that housing project needs to provide net new housing to Seneca County. So
Yeah, I see
we
that.
can't incentivize, you know, an existing 20-unit apartment building for them to just come in and do some upgrades to those, you know, 20 units and say, hey, I need, you know, 10-year pilot agreement. Like, no, you have to provide additional housing units. In this case, it's pretty clear it does because it was a restaurant, you know, with apartments being added.
How many apartments are gonna be in this when you're done?
6 is what they're proposing.
And when I say housing, I mean, I don't think we should be giving tax breaks to anybody on an individual house because there's a development there. I'm saying give a developer a tax break on property that they're buying, they're getting water and sewer to it, all that kind of stuff. When somebody buys
Short-term
that.
during the construction,
Yep,
yeah.
the homeowner, that's standard
That's
deal.
something that we've been talking about a bit with county planning in the context of Willard. But obviously, there hasn't been, at this point in time, any developer that's
Yeah.
approached anybody saying, here's what I need. So you're right, that would be a whole separate sort of
Yeah.
structure versus a lot of other IDAs. And we've done housing here in this IDA, not very much as of yet, but the Huntington apartment project in Seneca Falls was one of the first projects that I was here for back in 2020. But a lot of other IDAs are starting to look at incentivizing housing now because there's sort of a statewide.
Of course, one of the deals, and that's where I hope we don't go down that road, but if what we're getting approached for is low-income housing in a community, what's our stance on that? We've,
I mean, I think our stance has
More or less
always
done
been,
something.
we sort of follow the lead of the community itself. I mean, if the community has no lead, which has happened to us in Lodi, for instance, with solar projects, then we're sort of on our own. But most, I mean, we're assuming, and I think we've checked with the town of Fayette, that they're
Yes.
behind this. They've actually blessed this project. But
this project,
This-
oh yeah,
yes.
that community's working
Yeah.
really hard to do exactly this, so yes, they would. Well, you could be doing projects that, communities almost don't know what they're getting into. They bring in a low-income project, they're subsidizing them to the tune of, they're spending $600,000 a unit. The developers are making a fortune building them, and you couldn't afford to build them for that. They're putting them in the middle of a downtown Seneca Falls, and I don't mean on the main highway, they're putting them in the downtown community where you've got a lot of single homes, and now you got a 40-unit that's there to low-income housing, and the dynamics that's happened to those communities has not been good at all. So,
Keep
you know.
in mind, your lodestar is you have to make a finding that the project is gonna foster economic development,
Yeah.
right? So if you had one of those projects come to you, you'd have to look very closely and say, you know, is this really gonna foster economic development?
Yeah.
right? And that's again, what if you keep your focus on that, I mean, that's what kind of hopefully should keep you from sliding into some of these things that may or may not be.
See, because there's so much of that money from the state that's actually available now, and the fact is, and we've done one, but the fact is, these developers are making really good money. They don't need our tax breaks. What you need is housing for people, and this is gonna be housing, this isn't short-term, it's not low-income housing, but there's a fine line there, and some of these projects have not done well for the community themselves. And people are getting into it because there's money available, and they think it's a great thing. A year later, they wish they'd never done it. We don't need to be part of figuring out how to support that, because the developers are walking away doing really well. This is a whole different thing. I'm just saying, there's a lot of fine lines here to figure out, so.
Well, that's why each project comes for consideration before the board. Just because one has been approved doesn't mean
Yeah, it's
that they
easy to
all
say
meet the
that
same
here,
standard.
but
Other comments, questions, concerns?
And I'm not against this project. I know why they're trying to do it. I know the town down there, the hamlet's been trying to figure out some of this stuff, so for them, it's a great project. But there'll be other ones that probably wouldn't be the right ones to do that I could argue could be pretty similar. It probably would be a little bigger.
Okay, do we have a motion on this particular inducement resolution?
I make a motion to accept it.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion, further discussion?
I think the only thing, just need to include something that this is it's a long-term rental. The intent is a long-term rental, not a short-term. How that really gets put in, but
I think that's in the project description.
Sure.
If it's not, we can address that, but that'll certainly be part of the covenants in the final, if you approve it, that'll be part of the
Yeah.
covenant.
And we're not approving it now, right? We're just
Not
opening up.
approving it.
Not approving it now.
There will be a
Public hearing.
public hearing.
Yep.
Yes.
Because I think there's gonna be
A public hearing in the town of Fayette.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be a ton of pushback when people can't pull into that parking lot to go to the post office. Believe me, I go by there quite a bit, and there's at least 3 or 4 cars there all the time, and I'm afraid these people will say that's not gonna be allowed. And if they don't allow it, there is no other parking for that Fayette post office. except
That's
it's
their
also-
parking lot now?
Yes.
It is their parking lot?
Well, people pull in front, Tom, or they pull across the road in front of the old church, which is difficult because they're older people, most of them, and they're walking across 414, and that's not a good situation. But I'm just saying, I'm glad there's gonna be a public hearing, because I think that'll be the time we're gonna hear about this. So, when it's not us.
Well, it's our public hearing.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they would be responsive to those
They
concerns
seem like good people.
I'm leery of that. I'm leery of that.
until it's in writing.
Yeah, because, there's not enough parking around that building as it is now, because the whole north side is the septic system. And I would really begin to question that is gonna be big enough, even though it was a restaurant, it's gonna be big enough for 6 apartments and a business. And Fayette can be tough. They made my son, he put an Airbnb in, they made him change his septic tank because he added 1 bedroom to his house. So Fayette, and he mentioned the 2 people, they want the things move forward in Fayette, but I'm not sure the people that live in Fayette do. There's people there now that, like, I don't know if anybody knows, the big brick house on the east side of the road has been sold to, I think Fayette bought it for a museum. There's Damon Nicholson is buying as many houses he possibly can along the road and remodeling them. Dervin Zeisset, the other contractor, Menai contractor, has been buying them on the east side of the road, and they're remodeling them. So Fayette's really sort of growing. I mean, there's some really sloppy places too, but that's just the way it is. And in time that we've met, Fayette is growing, and there'll be a lot of things happening, I think, in the future.
Other comments? We'll have a vote, Kelly?
Mr. Brusso?
yes.
Mr. Brownell?
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie?
Yes.
Mr. Keim?
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Lott?
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray? Mr. Kircher, absent, motion carried.
Okay. That passes. Next item on the agenda. is our Chamber of Commerce update. Jeff?
Sure. Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, certainly a busy time right now at the Chamber of Commerce. We do a fair amount of work with business coalition groups across the state. This is the time of year where legislative policies in Albany are in center focus. We've spent a lot of time here today talking about short-term rentals. Bring everyone up to speed. There is a pretty significant piece of legislation working its way through Albany as it relates to short-term rentals. It would include a statewide registry system. It would include those property owners for short-term rentals having the same, well, not the same, but similar safety and security components for short-term rentals as would a hotel or bed and breakfast, the egress signs, for example. So pretty significant piece of legislation making its way that we are monitoring.
That's okay.
At the state level. Also, we're monitoring legislative policies on extended producer responsibility. We talked a little bit about that at One Seneca today. This has a pretty big significance for Seneca County as it relates to the craft beverage industry. So a lot of policy decisions that we are monitoring and we are actively participating in Albany right now. From a tourism standpoint, we are working through our advertising efforts are underway to promote Seneca County as a destination for the solar eclipse. And so we are actively promoting this community for the most part in areas to the east and south of Seneca County. So from basically east of Syracuse through Albany down into the southern part of Pennsylvania. Those residents, those people in those communities would not be in the path of totality for the solar eclipse, so this would be a logical destination to host them. So that is part of what we are doing for tourism efforts. In terms of other chamber initiatives, well, I'll back up and I'll start with One Seneca. We continue to have weekly One Seneca calls, trying to bring together the chamber, the IDA, and the county. Certainly encourage any board members here to join those calls. It's a half an hour from 10 to 10:30 on every Thursday. We do have quite an engaged community that goes to those, is a part of those, and is engaged. And then Chamber of Commerce wise, I wanted to mention one more thing. And I know a number of you were at the Chamber annual dinner. We appreciate your presence and at that event. At that event, we our Chamber community awarded the Northeast College of Health Sciences the project or initiative of the year. I wanted to kind of single them out because they have various new degree programs as well as certification program, one of them being the certification, I know, massage therapy, and then they have a number of different degree programs, as well as a new anatomy lab that they opened up. And so they've made significant investment in our community. And the point, really, the hope is that those degree programs will help provide a healthcare workforce for this community, not just Seneca County, obviously, but the Finger Lakes. It is very different than I think the model even when I started at the Chamber a few years ago, where most of their students came from New York City area, Long Island area, they graduated and they went off. This sort of transition from that college is really aimed at keeping the knowledge and the education local. And I, for one, am really excited about what they're doing. I would certainly encourage all of us as an IDA board, as well as the county board, to keep their eyes and monitor what Northeast College is doing for any potential projects they have, any potential help that we can offer in expansion. It is pretty significant what they're doing, and really hope that our community understands the level of investment they're making. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say Finger Lakes Community College also has a number of initiatives that they are working on. So really exciting time in our community. I think there is a lot of exciting projects happening. Happy to be part of them, and I'll do my best to keep everyone updated here.
Jeff, since we've been talking about housing, and it's been a long stated condition of the Finger Lakes that there isn't enough hotel room housing, do we know of any major hotel projects that are looking at the Finger Lakes that might think about Willard as a place to actually locate? Have you heard anything like that?
I have not heard any specific interest that has made it known that that's the potential project that they might have, but I know that and being a part of the task force, I know that is an element.
It just seems like the two are completely compatible, but I haven't heard anybody.
Well, I'll tell you from my standpoint, at the Chamber of Commerce as a tourism promotion agency, one thing that Seneca County does not have is waterfront accommodations outside of short-term rentals. And that is something that is in demand. I mean, look no further than Canandaigua. The Lake House in Canandaigua is a high-end property that has been totally revamped and has contributed mightily to the tourism economy and the general economy. If you look across the lake in Cayuga Lake to the Inns of Aurora and what they have turned that facility into on the waterfront, pretty remarkable. So I would certainly support the mindset of considering that property for.
But what you're saying now too, though, means that the two Boy Scout camps, which are going to become public access, is a real big asset.
I would think that anytime you can bring more public access to our water resources is a good thing. We're certainly supportive of what's happening at the two Boy Scout camps. And I know short-term rentals has been talked about a lot, battled around a lot. I think I have sort of more of a middle-of-the-road mindset when it comes to the short-term rentals. Because they are a very important part of our current tourism economy and our tourism mix. And so I think it is important to have that sort of push and pull, right? We can't go too overboard, but you certainly can't pull back in a way that damages the progress.
It's not all bad.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, a lot of issues happening right now in our community at once, seemingly. But it's not necessarily a bad thing either.
Other questions for Jeff? Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Ernie, from the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, I got some stuff. Of course, it's a brand new year. Chairman is elected, has picked all of his committees. The Grove Seneca is doing well. At 26 applicants. Now some of them have got their certificate for their business stuff and getting it all together, and they'll be putting out some grants shortly. So it's they'll be getting ready to the second half of it. So it's gone well, except for 3 or 4 frauds that came across, so we had to deal with that and get rid of it. So that's what I have up to date right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have something to say, just to both of you. You know, a couple weeks ago in the newspaper, still get Finger Lakes Times, and sort of old-fashioned that way, got to read the paper, but they had an article in there, the state did, that they're putting the bridge up on 5 and 20 between Seneca Falls and Cayuga County for sale in 2025. There'll be a new bridge built in 26. I got worried because we haul 300 loads of grain every year between Seneca Falls and Cayuga. So if that bridge isn't there, it's 13 miles up 89, 31, and back down 90 to get to the same point, which is a mile and a half across there. The state Farm Bureau has started to work on it already. At this point, they have no plan. The engineers are working on it, but what we're asking for is that they put a temporary bridge there across the old concrete piers that are in there, whether it's doable or not, but the engineers are just starting this project. So they need to find some way to have a temporary bridge there, because if people have to go around, it'll cut tourism, it'll cut business. I'm on that road 4 times a day, taking a truckload over and back again. There is so much traffic on that road down through, and it's the only way in and out of this part of the county. There, with the lake and the thruway, you're blocked. So we just need to be really.
I'm glad you brought that up, Ralph, because we did cover that today in this morning's One Seneca call. Supervisor Shipley had said that he's gonna bring that back to the supervisors, to have the supervisors aware of it, and hopefully have some support from this. The Chamber of Commerce is working with the Farm Bureau on that. I talked to Mark James a week ago on it, and you're right, 13 miles is quite a diversion.
Yes.
And there's really, if you think about it, that road, there is no other way unless you go all the way around the lake or you go all the way around the thruway somehow. So I think that makes the most sense, doing some sort of a temporary bridge or relocating it to the right while they work on the left, something of that nature. So yeah, we are very aware of it. We're working with the Farm Bureau at the Chamber of Commerce level. I think it's something everyone should be aware of. It's right on the border of Seneca and Cayuga County, so it's really the only road in, the only road out for many instances. So yeah, I certainly have it on our radar, and I know the supervisors have a connection now to it.
Good. The more people know about, the better it's gonna be, because now's the time to make the plans, because once it happens, it'll be too late.
Yeah.
So,
They're gonna start at 25?
the bridge is gonna be sold in 25, and
Okay.
they're thinking the bridge has historic value, and they want somebody, if somebody's interested in taking the bridge and putting it someplace else. But 26 is when the actual construction will
Okay.
happen.
It's in the DOT budget for the 25-26 year.
So, interesting.
Anything else?
For sure.
Okay, other business. Sarah?
So we have a few items. One of which being that when we sent out the original packets, we forgot that the UTEP needed to be approved. We did that through our governance committee back in December, and then needed to give a 30-day timeline to all of our school municipal officials so that they could provide comment. So the governance committee did review the revised UTEP and is recommending the approved changes. The document with the changes highlighted was attached to the briefing memo. It should be on everybody's table somewhere. So it's got a few passages highlighted. Really, the changes are that any project, including a residential component, will be required to demonstrate that that project will result in a net increase in available housing units in order to be eligible for incentives. So we talked about that earlier, and then the other bit is the addition of the standard pilot schedule that we had previously discussed many months ago. So it's for a 10-year, 100% exemption in the first year, decreasing by 10% each year thereafter. So those are the proposed changes. Questions?
And this has gone through the taxing jurisdictions.
It has, no
Without
comments were
comments.
received back.
Questions?
Looks fine.
We need a motion to approve this with a voice vote?
We should do a roll call though,
With a
probably.
roll call, okay.
Yeah,
Anyone-
I'll do the motion.
Motion to
Second.
accept, seconded by Ben. Kelly, roll call, please.
Mr. Brusso?
Yes.
Mr. Brownell?
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie?
Yes.
Mr. Kine?
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Lot?
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray, Mr. Kircher, absent, motion carried.
Okay, so another policy that the IDA has actually already approved this year was our records and retention policy. But we have before you an amendment to that, and I'll go into a bit of explanation. So I know we've been looking at some changes within the office, and one of those is sort of related to how can we digitize more of our records. And as it turns out, the state has some grants and things available to public authorities and municipalities to help them with this. So David has been doing some research for us on those grant programs. One of the requirements is that our records and retention policy be updated, so there is a schedule that our current policy refers to, and essentially that schedule is outdated. So there is a resolution that the board will need to approve that is recommended by the state in order for us to apply for this grant. And really this is the first step in us kind of making all those necessary updates. So it's just a matter of approving a schedule change essentially, which outlines what the state's requirements are for which documents need to be kept for certain durations and in what formats and that kind of thing. And I do not have, before anybody asks, I do not know what the specific differences are between the two schedules.
I don't know how critical it is, but this one's dated February 2025 at the top. Just this, the resolution, so
Oh.
we should change it to
Yeah.
24.
Good catch on that, thank you.
She was getting a jump on next year.
Oh yeah, in the first sentence there.
Does anyone want to make a motion to accept this, a resolution?
So
Show
moved.
me.
Second.
Second by Ben. Any discussion? All right, we'll need a roll call. Kelly?
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Mr. Brownell?
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie?
Yes.
Mr. Kime?
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Lot?
Yes.
Mr. Kircher and Mr. Tomer absent, motion carried.
Okay, next thing under other business, so we've talked previously about moving our board meetings.
Yes.
And so I'd sent an email out to everybody to seek input, and essentially, the consensus was that if we were going to change board meetings, that the best day and time to move them to would be Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. I know, at least in Tom's case, 9 a.m. isn't really a morning meeting, but unfortunately, we can't do anything earlier than that and feasibly be here on time in order to live stream and everything. So wanted to follow up with everybody here and say, okay, do we want to stick with the first Thursday at noon, or does everybody want to move to the second Tuesday at 9 a.m.?
It's the second Tuesday.
That's what it would be, aside from March, obviously, which if we moved to Tuesday, we would have on a Tuesday, but it would be later in the month. So wanted to get the sense of, you know, in light of that being sort of the most feasible new date and time, do people prefer that, or would you prefer to stay how we are now?
I would have a preference for the morning, yeah, not to jump the gun here.
I would also prefer morning, but. I prefer morning.
I could do either, so
Yeah, I can do either.
Yeah,
I can work around it.
either.
Okay, then we will change to the second Tuesday of the month at 9 a.m. and Kelly will send everybody an updated schedule with the dates. But just wanted to confirm that with everybody. And then the last bit of other business, we wanted to discuss Willard a little bit and maybe provide everybody with updates on where things are. So Bruce and I were invited to join earlier this week for the county's Special Economic Development, Tourism and Housing Committee meeting. It's rather a long committee name, but the new chair of that committee is Supervisor Jeff Trout. So we met just a few hours after, actually, we had been out to Syracuse for a visit to meet with some folks from Center State CEO. We took Jeff Trout and Beth Partee with us and sat down with them, talked about the work they're doing with Micron, and then on the semiconductor, tech corridor as a whole. And then we also took the opportunity to talk about Willard and what assistance they might be able to provide us as far as outreach within their network to potential master developers. So they are in the process of looking over the highest and best use study and will be following up with us on contacts who they think could be a good fit for the project based on the conceptual master plan that MRB provided. They are also sending a representative, so we are helping the county lead a tour on Monday to potential developers. So Center State is also sending a representative to that, so it'll be good to have them getting some familiarity with the site. The county issued the request for expressions of interest. That was the next step after the completion of the highest and best use study. That came out early January. The deadline is February 9th, so we're just about a week out from the deadline. As of the update that MRB provided on Monday's committee meeting, they've received one response so far, but are expecting about 4 others as of now. But they have received, general interest. There's been a few developers that are too busy right now with other projects to fill out the form and respond. But things have been positive so far. And they believe that it will be enough of a response for the community to continue moving on and eventually issue an RFP for the site, which could happen as soon as possibly April or May of this year. That's going to depend mostly on how long it takes to get an MOU agreed upon with the state in order for the county to have sufficient site control to issue an RFP viably. So that's quite a fast turnaround in general, and why I wanted to bring up more generally today how the IDA might be able to help assist the county with marketing of a future RFP. So I've talked over the past few years with a few different sort of industry publications, and I've always turned them down, when they try to get us to advertise. We really didn't have a need to make that kind of spend. But now that there is, a specific site, a specific project, it may be worth considering, pursuing one of those opportunities. So I did, I think it was included in the briefing memo, there was a proposal from Trade and Industry Development, but I've also looked into some other publications. I mean, overall, it's not inexpensive. We would be talking about just one publication alone, usually somewhere in the realm of like $3,000, to run an ad, either in the print edition. The Trade and Industry Development is actually not for a print edition, it's for an online banner ad, and then for an editorial that would be fully dedicated to Willard. So that's kind of promising.
Who subscribes to Trade and Industry?
Great question. I have that information right here.
Well, they put it in this too a little bit.
So admittedly, this is where I really kind of wanted to focus maybe this conversation, because we want to be targeting publications where, the executives and people are going to be the types involved in the types of development we're looking at with Willard. Admittedly, Trade and Industry Development, as well as another one that I've brought with me, which is Site Selection Magazine, they are a little bit more focused on the manufacturing industrial side. So Trade and Industry Development, their biggest, and I have these not as percentages, but you can kind of see there's a pie chart up here. So the biggest ones are finance and insurance, professional scientific technical services, management of companies, enterprises, administrative and support, manufacturing, public administration, and then you have smaller buckets for construction and real estate and that kind of thing.
Do we know what C-level executives are?
Yep, so your CEO, your COO, CFO, basically chief. It's the executive officers, which is who we would want to be pursuing. From that perspective, it's the right audience. Industry-wise, I'm not sure it's the best fit. They're sort of hospitality and real estate and everything is a much smaller bucket of their total subscribers, so it may not be worth the investment. The sort of appealing thing about this one was the ability for us to write our own editorial about Willard that is on their website, sort of flagged on their homepage for 12 months. But that being said, if we're going to make the investment, I want us to be doing something that's going to provide return. MRB has also gotten back to me because I reached out to them to see what their thoughts were. And they said, Tracy Verrier has had experience with these publications before when she worked for Cayuga County Economic Development. And she said it's not really worth the return. They had done some advertising just generally of industrial parks. She's like, maybe you'd have better success with an actual RFP, but her suggestion was to maybe try trade and industry type groups like builders associations and trade associations and focus more on New York and Pennsylvania. Or to find more hospitality based association types. I have found another publication that may be more along the lines. So there's a publication called Development Magazine, which is focused more on commercial real estate, which I think overall is a better audience fit for the Willard project. But again, their costs of advertising are in here. So a third of a page ad is $2,800, you know, and that's obviously to run it once in one print edition. I haven't had a conversation with them, the other people we have, and they've sort of said, well, you know, this is what we can do for you, and it's discounted, but it's still expensive. So that's a lot of information at once. Basically, there's two questions. There's the general, you know, what's the appetite of this board to want to financially support some marketing efforts with these types of groups that we have maybe more direct connection to than the County Board of Supervisors does.
What's the county going to do what's their thought? They've taken this over, what's their thought on what they're doing?
So, I'll just follow up a little bit on what Sarah covered there. So we did go to Syracuse and meet with the Center State CEO people. It's a 40-person organization. It's incredibly successful after the general, or the executive director, Rob Simpson, has been there 20 years, is really well-versed in upstate New York economic development. They've had a lot of success, sort of culminating in this Micron announcement. They were very receptive, I think, to our coming in and sort of putting our shoulder behind the wheel of economic development in central New York. I mean, it was a great contact, I think. And there are a couple takeaways from that. Number one was they viewed economic development for central New York as kind of a corridor between Albany and Columbus, Ohio. And they said, don't only look at the Micron instance as the only area of opportunity for you. They've really got a pretty broad focus. You know, the executive director there says, you know, if all goes like we want it to go, the place is going to be transformed. Housing is going to become a problem. You're going to see a lot of movement in terms of people. You know, all that's well and good, and I think my feeling is the Center State CEO has a footprint that goes as far as Cayuga County, but there's no reason that it cannot also begin to encompass what we're doing here in Seneca County. I think we could learn a lot, quite honestly, as an economic development organization to spend more time with them. It was a great first meeting, but they've got a lot of really knowledgeable staff. One of the number 2 people there was with the IDA in Onondaga County for 12 years. So I think we're just kind of at the front end of that. And my feeling is somebody's got to promote this economic development in general in the county, Willard specifically to start with. And before we make any commitments financially to this media or that publication, I think we need to spend a little bit more time with them and get the benefit of their thinking. And I mean, my biggest concern with Willard is we have no one directly responsible for selling it. We have a consultant that has produced a report, and they've done some work on it, but I don't personally feel like we have enough feet on the street and enough really horsepower dedicated to promoting this opportunity. And the issue will be that the thought is, or the assumption is, the interest shown thus far in this request for expression of interest will be sufficient to satisfy the state of New York that we're in a bona fide process that is showing progress. However, that doesn't mean we're going to get a substantially scaled developer to come in here toward the middle or latter part of the summer and say they're gonna put their money into this area. So I think promotion is kind of an open issue for us, but someone's gotta be responsible for it, and it isn't clear right now who that is. That's point one.
So I saw in the paper where the county was talking about spending another 100,000 with MRB.
So,
What was
so
that
this is
about?
part two. So part of what the county has done has assumed responsibility for the Willard development. They have retained MRB, not the group that did our highest and best use study, but Matt Horn, formerly with the city of Geneva, to draft the operating agreement and articles of incorporation of an LDC, a local development corporation, that would operate within the county, that would have as its primary mission overseeing, at least at this stage, the development of the Willard project. And so.
So they're talking about paid staff.
Yes, how do you fund it? You know, what's its mission, what's its vision statement? It's a legitimate new entity that is really growing out of the Economic Development, Tourism, and Housing Committee, currently led by Jeff Trout. So at the meeting that we went to on Monday, Matt Horn said, this is how you set up an LDC, and you know, the sooner you get on it, the better. And you have to compose a board that's made up of the people that have a logical, legitimate stake in the outcome here. It's got to be balanced. It's got to have people from different perspectives on it, and then you've got to fund it, and then it is responsible for delivery here on this project.
How do you fund it?
Well, you know.
Are there any more
Well, there's
grants available?
There's reserves. The county has financial reserves in the bank for a rainy day, and then there's also the ARPA fund that's sitting there unallocated at this time. I mean, the feeling was, for at least the next 18 months, they can find the money. That was kind of reading the tea leaves, but that group needs to move pretty quickly to staff a board, get it organized. What they said was, assuming that the state agrees that we have enough interest now from the development community, such as it is, they will craft an MOU saying the county, even though it doesn't own this property now, the county has our permission to go out and seek bona fide proposals. It'll take several months to draft that MOU, and the thought was that RFP would go out sometime in August, September timeframe for this project. I feel like there's a role for the IDA to play here. I personally think the IDA can play, and the chamber, Jeff, quite honestly. Given your voiceover techniques, I think you are pretty well positioned to be the voice of this, if you want. To promote this. It needs to be sold. And I don't know that yet we have the same as people.
Question, or maybe a comment too. First, just on the LDC end.
Yes.
I was under the impression that the LDC is also required for the county to take ownership and control of the Boy Scout camp as well. Is that correct? So it'll be a dual role here with.
That, Jeff, I'm not sure. I know there's movement.
Yeah.
There's a separate path, parallel path going on
Yeah.
there that I think Joe Boris out of Ovid is sort of leading the charge on.
So I think that would get,
Rolled in there.
yeah, rolled in
Yeah.
altogether.
The other thing is when we met with the folks in Syracuse, they said that having an LDC of this type is a sign of seriousness within the county's administration. They also said, look, any developer, anyone at the state that doesn't think all the active participants in the county are on the same page, they begin to back off. So the chamber, Board of Supervisors, IDA, as long as everybody is on the same page, this process continues.
The other thing I would, is just a question, I guess, more than anything, is what role does the GRE play in this? Meeting with Center State, but I know Rob, I think Rob is fantastic, I think Center State's CEO is fantastic, but GRE, isn't that one of the organizations that the IDA funds and pays a pretty significant fee in that, and
And
I
we would
guess
do
what
the-
role are they?
Well, so again, I don't know the total background on it, but the state economic development footprints, the different territories have been juggled over time, and there is maybe some, you know, who gets the prize, who gets the, who's better than who. So there's a little bit of tug of war among them, I think. But as far as Center State CEO is concerned, we can be a member just like we are at GRE. And there's no exclusivity there. And I think we can benefit from both, actually, by being a member. I think it's 5,000 to GRE a year.
Yeah, I think it just went up a little bit, but yeah.
It's probably about the same. Just the experience and the scope of what they do, I think can be a real asset to what we're trying to do here.
Oh, I don't disagree.
We've been kind of on a little island here between the two comments.
I don't disagree, I'm just, I guess my thought process in terms of the marketing and the advertising, that's what GRE is, from my
Yeah,
purview,
no one is
was
gonna-
set up, right? To
no one is
go to
gonna-
those site selectors, be in front of them.
No one is gonna do it the way, I mean, they haven't, as far as I know, they haven't sent out one email on this
Yeah.
project. So, again, I'm very, very skeptical that we're gonna get the interest we'd like to see unless all hands are on deck. So, final summary line, we will be part of, I think, the LDC. We'll have representation on the county's LDC. How many seats, of what type, I don't know for sure, but we're all kind of pulling on the same oars together.
We're not gonna have a lot of influence on either of those. They
No.
can help us and be involved. We're not gonna have a lot of pull. Even those organizations, you sit around, the people that have the pull are the people that have the
Yeah,
money.
no, we don't.
And they
We don't.
decide where things are going. Not that it's not good to be part of them, you almost need to, but if we think we're gonna have a seat and have a lot of influence, we're probably not.
No, I don't think we are, but I think we can benefit
Yep,
from just being
I
at
agree.
that table.
Yeah.
So
I
then-
guess where I was going with that, just sorry to interrupt, but
Sure.
where I was kind of going with that was, couldn't we gain some guidance from both GRE and Center State in
Sure.
terms of what
Mhm.
marketing outlets are, in their experience, has
Yeah.
been good producers over others?
We definitely can. So I will reach out to them about that.
I mean, the one fear we have is you get to the end, if, you put out a request for proposals and you don't get anyone from qualified applicants. That's not where we want to be. That's going back to square zero, and no one wants that.
Yeah. We still haven't gotten an answer on the question of if there's gonna be money spent to do promotions and stuff up here, where is that coming from?
We have not come to that point, Tom.
Okay.
A question for Rob. It always makes me nervous when you're trying to lump too many things together, and if they're talking about this Economic Development Corporation, would it be wise to keep the Boy Scout camps separate from the Willard project?
We have no say in that.
If you're asking my opinion, yes, it would be, but again, I don't know.
Yeah, we're not at
That's
that.
the
We're not-
county level.
That's not in our, we're not at that table right now.
How many acres did the Boy Scout camp add to this?
Which Boy Scout camp?
Babcock
Babcock?
Hubby.
Babcock.
It's like, what, 200 acres,
Yeah,
I think?
I'm not sure.
It's about approximately that. I sit on that council board, so.
That's the one in proximity to Willard,
Yeah.
Babcock
Right.
Covey, but the other
But
one that's down
You're,
on.
you're talking about Kent Barton, probably.
I think Camp Barton is
Yeah.
what is
That's the-
required for the LDC.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that's like 80.
The Babcock Hubby is for sale.
Yeah.
There is negotiation taking place with the state. there's other opportunities also being looked at this point, so.
That's the one I believe multiple municipalities are potentially coming together on that one, but it's the other one that I think is requiring the LDC.
So there's another committee, a special committee meeting of the Economic Development, Housing and Tourism Committee of the Board of Supervisors next week. So they're trying to get this thing pretty much nailed down quickly. And they've got the attention of Matt Horn, who seems to be sort of the go-to guy right now in the MRB relationship, because it's not just this LDC, but also some water district stuff going too. Anything else? Okay, do we have an executive session?
Yes.
Okay, so I am going to request a motion to enter into executive session for discussion of the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property where publicity would substantially affect the value thereof. Do I have a motion to enter into executive section? Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have concluded our executive session, and we have nothing to report from that session. We will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move, yeah, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all very much.
Welcome to the Seneca County Economic Development Corporation meeting for February 1st. First item on the agenda is election of EDC officers for 2024. I'd like to keep the officers the same as last year. Myself as chair, Jeff Shipley is vice chair, and Tom Kime is secretary and treasurer. So any objections to that? If not, motion to approve the officers?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Next is on your packet, we received meeting minutes from our last meeting, October 24th. Any changes or modifications? Hearing none, motion